Hey guys, happy Monday. Welcome and thank you so much for tuning in. I am Abra Kurt, a certified integrative life and wellness coach, and you are watching my series Sparked. Sparked is a weekly lifestyle series and a vibrant online community that meets right here in the comments of the show, where each week we light fires around connection, reflection, and inspiration about all things personal growth, wellness, and the world around us. This week, you are tuned in for a very special episode. Hey, babe, thank you so much for tuning in. You are always the first person here and one of the most loyal Sparked community members that I've ever met. Thank you, Mama Vicky. Happy Sparkly Monday to you, y'all. Happy Sparkly Monday. Tonight is a very special episode of Sparked. Tonight we are celebrating the progress of women across a timeline of American HERstory. Hi, Georgie. Thank you so much for being here. Tonight, we are celebrating the progress of women, you guys. I am so excited. I can't wait to talk about some milestones in our long and ongoing HERstory. Trish, thank you so much for being here. As you guys are hopping on, please say hi. Let me know you're here. And let me know how you're feeling. Let me know how you're doing, like coming into this week, you guys, because last week felt like it was about a month long. Am I right? Last week felt like it was about a month long. So let me know how you're feeling coming into tonight. Are you excited? Are you anxious? Were you one of the people dancing in the streets on Saturday? Are you still dancing in the streets? I don't know. Are you dancing in your living room? Let me know. Let me know how you're feeling tonight, headed into this new week that hopefully won't feel like a month. Scott says girl power. That is my man, y'all. That is my man. He is my biggest supporter, my biggest cheerleader. It is a mutual love and support and admiration society, and he is all about the progress of women and has always been all about loving and supporting and being there for me every minute of the way. So send up some hearts for the men who love us and support us, you guys. Send up some hearts for the men like Scott, the men like George who are here. Hello, Rose and George in the house. Send up some hearts for those guys who love and support us and are here tonight to celebrate making HERstory. Hey, Jennifer, thank you so much for being here. My mama-in-law, Vicky, says she is feeling hopeful. Yes, same here. Scott says, feeling good. There's change in the air. I could not agree more. The winds of change were blowing last week for sure. I love seeing those hearts. Love seeing those hearts for HERstory and the men who love and support us in that journey. All right, you guys. I also just want to point out that you'll see some links in the episode description to support our content and community. And every single week, we pay it forward by making a 10% contribution to a charity doing really important work in our local communities and around the country. So if you are so inclined, please consider a contribution to support this show, to support this community, and to support its ongoing content. And we pay it back every single week with a 10% contribution to charity, which I will talk about a little bit later in tonight's show, but I'm super excited about this week's charity. George says, feeling relieved and hopeful for better times ahead. Yes, yes, yes. Cheers to that. Trish says, much better than last week. Happy dance on Saturday. Yes. I think there were a lot of happy dances in the streets on Saturday. I know coverage here locally showed the streets of DC just filled with people wearing masks. It was kind of impossible to socially distance, but there were happy people wearing masks, literally dancing in the streets all over Washington, DC, and that was really joyous to see jubilation in the streets and not what we've seen lately. There was reason for people to be happy, and that was wonderful to see. All right, you guys. So this week we are here to celebrate the progress of women, and we're gonna divide this show up into sort of two halves. Okay, so the first half is going to be a little bit of a walk through some major milestones, some firsts in women's history, some major milestones along the way. We're going to play a little bit of women's HERstory trivia, which I am super excited to have taken a page from my husband's show playbook and written some trivia questions. And then the second half of the show is going to be about celebrating the most recent shattered glass ceiling and raising a glass and talking a little bit about the woman who has made history as the first female vice president-elect of the United States of America. So that will be a little bit later in the show. The first half is going to be dedicated to some major milestones about women's progress through the course of our country's HERstory. All right, you guys, last week we came together on the eve of the US election to talk about what unites us, to talk about the values that we share as Americans, to talk about our shared hopes and dreams for ourselves, our families, for our communities, for the common good, right? And that election has proven to be historic. Donna says, woohoo, trivia. All right, yes, let's hear it for trivia, you guys. Send up some hearts for trivia. As you guys are hopping on, as more people are hopping on, please say hi. Let me know you're here. If you want to share a few words about how you're feeling heading into this week, that would be wonderful. So yeah, you guys, the last time we were here, we had a month's worth of election happen in the past week, and that has proven to be historic in several ways, you guys. And I want to share some of that data with you. As of Sunday, as of yesterday, the tallied votes have accounted for 62% of the eligible voting age population of the United States, you guys. So this actually translates to record voter turnout. One of the ways that this election has made history is in its voter enthusiasm and voter turnout. 62% of eligible voters cast ballots in this election, making it a record high in terms of these demographics of the modern electorate, right? Because the modern electorate didn't always look this way. So right now we have women and men aged 18 and older, but it wasn't always that way. Women didn't used to be able to vote. People of color didn't used to be able to vote. The voting age used to be 21. So with the modern demographics of our electorate, this is a record high, y'all. And that is a big ups for all the people of the United States of America being enthusiastic about our process, being enthusiastic about participating in that process. Donna said she is so thrilled for Joe and Kamala. Yes, I'm super excited. I can't wait to share some really interesting facts about our vice president-elect later in the show. Another way this election has made history, you guys, the highest number of votes ever cast for a presidential candidate. The highest number of votes ever cast for a presidential candidate. Yes, let's send up some hearts for record voter turnout and the highest number of votes ever cast for a presidential candidate. History-making election, you guys. History-making election. All right, and I just want to share one more way that this election has made history, and that is, y'all, we're going to have our first rescue dog in the White House. Our first rescue dog in the White House. And y'all, as a fur mama, granted it's kitties and not the puppers, but as a fur mama myself, the fur mama of 4 rescue babies, that warms my heart like nothing else. All right, the pitter patter of little fur feet in the White House. How adorable is that, you guys? Joe and Jill Biden fostered and then adopted a German Shepherd named Major 2 years ago from the Delaware Humane Association, and he's going to be the first rescue dog in the White House. Yes, everybody loves our rescue pups. Everybody loves our rescue pups. All right, big hearts for the rescue pup Major in the White House, and he is one of 2 fur babies that are going to take up a residence on Pennsylvania Avenue, Black Lives Matter Plaza, in a couple months. All right, you guys, that's some way that this election made American history, but this episode is about making her story. This episode is about making her story. So, as I mentioned, first half is going to be dedicated to a little walk down memory lane, some women's firsts, some major milestones in American history, and the second half is going to be devoted to raising a glass to our new VP elect. How it started, how it's going, right? How many of you have done the photo collage of that latest social media craze? How it started and how it's going. Yes, Donna says along with Champ. I couldn't think of the other pup's name. Thank you for chiming in with that. Champ and Major, fur babies in the White House, rescue pup for the first time ever. Yes, I love that. All right, you guys. In the email invitation and in my Facebook post earlier this evening, I encouraged everyone to BYOB. And that stands for bring your own bubbly. So that we could raise a glass to making her story. So please join me in raising a glass and saying a big cheers to all those shattered glass ceilings and to our most recent making her story. Cheers, you guys. And I'm drinking Prosecco. What are you all drinking? I love Prosecco for celebrating little things at home. Always have a bottle in the fridge. What are you guys drinking? What are you guys toasting with tonight? Share in the comments. Let me know. Trish says, we did it. Working together. Great day for the fur babies. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Vicky says, cheers. Let me know what y'all are toasting with tonight. Okay, you guys. It's time for... Even though it's a special episode, we're still doing it. We're still doing it. You know what time it is. It is time for the quote of the week. There's always going to be a quote of the week because it's like one of my favorite parts of the show. I think you guys dig it too. And I love sharing words that inspire me with y'all. I love sharing words that inspire me with you guys. And this week's quote is from the woman that we are going to be talking about a little bit later in the show, our Vice President-elect, Kamala Harris. These words are hers, and this is the quote of the week. Oh, Vicky's drinking Riesling. Very nice, very nice. What is everybody else drinking tonight? All right, take a sip as I share the quote of the week from our VP-elect, Kamala Harris. If anyone ever gets in your way and tells you not to follow your dreams, be it because of your age, gender, what you look like, or where you came from, don't listen. Do not be burdened by what has been when you can create what should be. Wise words, y'all. Do not be burdened by what has been when you can create what should be. If someone ever gets in your way and tells you not to follow your dreams, don't listen. Do not be burdened by what has been when you can create what should be. I love that, you guys. All right, what's everyone drinking? Scott is drinking Prosecco. Yes, we are sharing a bottle of bubbly Prosecco in this house. Trish is having a lemon seltzer with limoncello. Ooh, yummy. George is having some Chardonnay. All right, you guys. Cheers, cheers, cheers. Here's some cheers to y'all for tuning in tonight to talk about some progress for women in this country. And cheers to those wise words in the quote of the week, you guys. Do not be burdened by what has been when you can create what should be. All right. And that is from a Facebook post, actually, that Kamala made in April of 2018. So that was a public Facebook quote that she made in April of 2018. All right. So before we dive into the content of tonight's show and start talking about our little walkthrough women's HERstory, I want you guys to take to the comments. I want to hear from y'all about a major moment for the progress of women that you have seen in your lifetime that has been meaningful for you. A moment for women in your lifetime that has been particularly meaningful for you or that stands out in some way as like a big memory. Whether it was a first, whether it was just a big milestone, some major event in celebrating the progress of women that is particularly meaningful to you from your lifetime. If you feel comfortable, if you have one that's coming to mind right now, please share in the comments. I want to hear what y'all have to say about the progress of her story and women making her story in this country. So if there is a major moment in your lifetime that you are thinking of right now, please share it in the comments. And while you guys are typing away, I'm going to share one of mine. Christine is drinking Snoop Dogg wine. I love that. Is that, I'm not even going to ask a question that just popped into my head, but let's hear it for Snoop Dogg wine. Scott says he was really young, but he remembers Geraldine Ferraro running for vice president. Yeah, I remember that too. The one that sticks out for me is really, it was the first memory I really have of like progress for women. And you guys, I had just turned 10 years old. And it was September of 1981. So y'all can do the math and figure out how old I am. Yep, I'm getting up there. It was September 1981, and Sandra Day O'Connor had just been nominated and appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court. And you guys, some backstory on my life. My dad was a Republican, and he loved himself from some Ronald Reagan, and he raised me on talking about politics in our house. It's why it comes so easy to me. It's why it comes so naturally to me. It was not something that was discouraged. It was something that was encouraged. Developing opinions, learning about facts, being able to talk about them and express them freely, even if you disagreed, y'all, because my dad and I didn't always agree on things, but what lit his heart up was that I had opinions and a grasp of facts and could speak to my opinions. And so I remember in 1981 when Sandra Day O'Connor was appointed to the Supreme Court, and one of his favorite phrases to say to me was, "You should be paying attention to this. You should pay attention to this." And he would say it about all kinds of things, and I can hear him saying it in that moment. And I was 10, y'all. I was 10, and I hadn't really thought about progress for women or women making history or her story or major milestones like that. But it was the year that for me I can really point to when I started paying attention to like big world events, right? Later that year in the summer, I remember watching the royal wedding of Charles and Diana on television. And so I started getting more curious about things like that. And when Sandra Day O'Connor was appointed to the Supreme Court, it was a big deal in my house. It was a big deal for me. And it was the first time that for me, the weight of progress for women like kind of sunk into my little 10-year-old head. And I was like, oh, wow, this is a really big deal. Like my dad is telling me to pay attention to this. We're watching this intentionally. Like we were talking about these kinds of, politics and issues in our house, and it was meaningful. And those kinds of conversations with my dad really shaped the person I have become. So I thank him for those conversations and those very robust debates at times. Trish says, the ladies of NASA making it possible for her career in computers. Trish, that is really meaningful. Thank you for sharing that. Donna says, HRC's speech at the UN Women's Conference in Beijing meant a lot to her, especially since she contributed a tiny bit to her talking points. That is a fact I did not know about you, Donna. I did not know that. That is awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Also, Madeleine Albright becoming the first female Secretary of State. Yes, there have been some incredible milestones in our lifetime, and particularly there have been a lot stacked over the past, 50 years or so, right? And there are so many more to come. Things that we haven't even envisioned yet, right? There's one big, thick glass ceiling in this country that kind of remains, but I think we're going to see a lot more milestones, a lot more progress, a lot more women taking places of power, and finally not just having equal rights, but equal power in this country. And that is what moves the needle, you guys. That is what moves the needle. So I want to thank you for sharing those things. If some of you are still typing and have things to share, I will try to give a shout out as they come up. I can't always see all of the comments, but trust me, I do go back and read every single thing the day after. George says, Halle Berry and Sally Field at the Academy Awards. Yeah, our women in the arts, you guys, our women in the arts have made some tremendous progress, and we can't forget about our women in the arts. We can't forget about our women in the arts. George, thank you for mentioning that. All right, so I said we were going to do a little stroll through the timeline of some American HERstory. And now I want you to get in a time machine with me. Get in a time machine with me, you guys, and we're going to go back. We're going to go back. I know my graphic was like how it started, how it's going, and how it started was like the graphic of the suffragettes in white from 100 years ago. We're going back farther than that. We are going back farther than that. Get in the time machine with me. All right, you guys. The date is March 31st, 1776. And if this were a Hamilton song, there would be some really like, booming like 1776. But I am not a rapper nor a hip hop artist, and I can't really do the fun things. But it is March 31st, 1776. What was happening in the country, in the land in 1776? Okay, let's find out. There was a lot. And while all of the revolution was swirling, okay, in a letter to her husband, founding father John Adams, future First Lady Abigail Adams makes a plea to him and the Continental Congress to, quote, remember the ladies. Remember the ladies and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Direct quote from her letter. Continues. Do not put such unlimited power into the hands of the husbands. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. She's writing this in a letter to her own husband, you guys. Abigail had some brass, y'all. And this is particularly interesting because the quote, remember the ladies, gets shared a lot. I love this next part. If particular care and attention is not paid to the ladies, we are determined to foment a rebellion, and will not hold ourselves bound by any laws in which we have no voice or representation. Abigail Adams, y'all, talking about a rebellion if her husband didn't remember the ladies. I love that. I need to write more letters like that to Scott. Okay, so March 31st, 1776, remember the ladies, or we're going to foment a rebellion. Spoiler alert, they forgot the ladies. So what ensues is the next 244 years of women fighting for our rights, one by one, making progress in society and the workplace, little by little, but shattering every glass ceiling in this country, but the thickest and most elusive one, which will come in time. All right, so I want to share with you guys now a list of HERstory's 21sts and big moments. 21sts and big moments, you guys. All right, so our time machine, we're getting back in our time machine. All right, you guys, 72 years later, 72 years after Abs wrote her letter to John, it is July 1848. The first women's rights convention organized by women, the Seneca Falls Convention in New York. 300 attendees, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, 100 people, 68 women and 32 men, including Frederick Douglass, the famous abolitionist, signed this declaration of sentiments from that conference that sparked decades of activism after. So 72 years after Abigail said, don't forget the ladies, is the first women's rights convention in 1848. All right, a couple years later, it is May of 1851, and Sojourner Truth, you guys, Sojourner Truth, the former enslaved woman turned abolitionist and women's rights activist, delivers her famous Ain't I a Woman speech at the Women's Rights Convention in Akron, Ohio. And you guys, I don't know how many of you are familiar with or have read the Ain't I a Woman speech, but it is so powerful. It's so raw. It's so authentic and real. And I'm embarrassed to admit that I hadn't read it until last week, when I was going through my U.S. Constitution and Other Documents book to prepare for our show about what unites us. And I have come to the opinion that Sojourner Truth's A Nine Woman speech should be required reading in all of our history classes. So Google it, read it. It is amazingly powerful and emotional, you guys. All right. 21 years after Seneca, 21 years after that first women's rights convention, in December of 1869, the legislature of the territory of Wyoming passes America's first suffrage law. And it granted women not only the right to vote, but to hold office, which, you know, is a pretty big deal, you guys, a pretty big deal. And then a couple of years later, 21 years after that, in 1890, Wyoming becomes the 44th state admitted to the Union and the very first state in the country to grant women the right to vote in 1890. 30 years before the 19th Amendment, which we're going to get to in a little bit. All right, so we're getting back in our time machine. It is now the 20th century. It's the 20th century, you guys. Women can vote in one state, yay, Wyoming. It's 1916. It's 1916, and Margaret Sanger opens the first birth control clinic in the United States. The first birth control clinic in the United States in Brooklyn. In Brooklyn, you guys. And I know we have Christine is here, and she's a Brooklyn girl. I don't know if any other people are Brooklyn peeps, but let's hear it for Brooklyn. However, her clinic was deemed illegal under the Comstock laws, you guys, under the Comstock laws. And a little fun fact, if you don't know what the Comstock laws were, they were a charming little act passed by Congress in 1873 that defined contraceptives as obscene and illicit. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, so she starts and has to close within the same year the first birth control clinic in the United States, but she was not done, you guys. She was not done. That was 1916. The next year, Jeanette Rankin of Montana. Let's hear it for the Wild West, you guys. The Wild West was like paving the way and blazing trails on so many levels, you guys. Jeanette Rankin of Montana, a longtime activist with the Women's National Suffrage Association, is elected and sworn in as the first woman in Congress as an elected member of the House of Representatives. So first woman in Congress, Jeanette Rankin of Montana, 1917, you guys. Before every woman in the country could even vote, Montana was putting women in the Congress. So let's hear it for them. All right, 3 years later, it is 1920. We are 100 years in our HERstory. And that one, y'all, we just celebrated this major centennial milestone this year. It was the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. The 19th Amendment was ratified on August 18th, 1920, stating that the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on the basis of sex. 19th Amendment, you guys. The ladies finally got our right to vote in 1920. 1920. So many, many years after Abigail asked her husband not to forget the ladies, we can finally vote. Yay. Cheers to suffrage and enfranchisement. All right. We're going to fast forward a little bit to a major first for women in the workplace. 1932, Amelia Earhart becomes the first woman and only the second person ever to fly solo nonstop across the Atlantic Ocean. Amelia Earhart making history in 1932. You guys, 1932, Amelia Earhart makes history. Her story. Her story. All right. Fast forward again. We are now in the 50s. You guys, we are in the 50s. Yes, Donna says, woohoo, 19th Amendment. Yes. All right, you guys, it is December 1955. December 1955. Dana says she is looking forward to what her young nieces will do in the future. Bust up more glass. Yes. I loved the meme that was going around over the weekend, you guys, about ladies, make sure you're wearing your shoes. There's glass everywhere. Yes. Yes. All right. Progress. I can't wait to see what the next generation does, you guys. We have a friend, and I don't know if she's here tonight, but we have a friend who's part of my book club in, my circle, and she just had a baby this year during the pandemic, and she sent a text, and she's like, you guys, and she's the mother of a son, so she has a little boy at home, and she's like, you guys, my son is only going to know this as normal. Oh, all the feels, you guys, all the feels for the next generation for whom this is just the way it is. The way it is, you guys. How cool is that? How cool is that? All right, it is December 1955. Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks refuses to give up her seat to a white man on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama, and the civil rights movement is lit up. All right, December 1955, Rosa Parks, another incredible moment, not only for women, but for people of color, women of color in this country. December 1955. Okay, it is time for our first HERstory trivia question. Our first women's HERstory trivia question is, and we're kind of moving in chronological order here, so it was just 1955. So our trivia question rolls us up to 1960. Dana says that is a powerful statement for a new mom to make. All the feels for sure. Yeah, it really was, you guys. Our whole collective book club on that group thread was just like, 1,000 messages of like, oh my gosh, yeah, like my kid is only gonna know this. Love that. All right, you guys, trivia. 1960. What did the U.S. FDA, I know this is super sexy trivia, right? What did the US FDA approve in 1960 that became so widely celebrated that 15 years later it inspired a song co-written by country music legend Loretta Lynn? And if you know it, throw in the title of the song to which I'm referring. What did the US FDA approve in 1960 that became so widely celebrated that 15 years later, Loretta Lynn co-wrote a song about it, you guys? Think about that. Show your answers in the comments, and we are going to get back in our time machine and keep moving forward. All right. 1960 to, yeah, you guys, we had some major, legislation come through in the 60s that were supposed to fix a lot of things, but it didn't fix everything. So we had the Equal Pay Act and the Civil Rights Act signed into law in 63 and 64 to, eliminate these workplace barriers and discrimination for women. And a lot of it didn't really take effect across the board the way that it was intended and hoped for. Yes, Vicky says the pill, Donna says birth control pill, Scott says the pill. And he nailed the title of The Answer and Loretta Lynn song all in one. Yes, Vicky, Donna, my husband, you are correct. The answer to the trivia question is the birth control pill, and Loretta Lynn's song is called The Pill. And for her, you guys, that song was really personal. It wasn't just a yay for the girls and being able to control our reproductive destiny. It was about, she had 4 kids before she turned 20. And continued to keep having kids, and it was hard on women. It would be hard on women to have that many children now. And back when Loretta was young, the pill didn't exist. And 1960, boom, thank you FDA, and she wrote a song about it. So how cool is that, you guys? All right, we're back in our time machine. It is, yes, Trish also, correct guess. Back in our time machine, it is now the 70s, and most of us are on the planet by this time. Most of us here are on the planet, or, this is the decade that we are coming into existence. So it's 1972, you guys. Title IX passes in 1972. Title IX of the Education Amendments is signed into law, which prohibits discrimination in any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance on the basis of sex. So Title IX is where our women's sports and education, all these great things for women in education came from. Title IX, 1972. The very next year, in 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court hands down its landmark Roe v. Wade decision. In the 70s, you guys, I was just a tiny little toddler crawling around when these things were happening. And that brings us to 1973. We're still in 1973. And I have another trivia question for you guys. And I don't know, maybe this one will be a little bit harder, maybe it won't. But I thought this was a fun trivia question. So it's 1973. Who were the two tennis players in the legendary 1973 tennis match that has become known as the Battle of the Sexes? And what was the outcome? Who were the two tennis players in the legendary 1973 Battle of the Sexes tennis match? And what was the outcome of that match? All right, y'all. We're getting back in our time machine. We are moving from 1973 to 1981 as you guys are answering the trivia question in the comments. And I already shared this moment for me. 1981, Sandra Day O'Connor becomes the first woman to serve on the United States Supreme Court. I was a little 10-year-old, and that was a big deal for me. Okay. Are you guys working on the trivia question? Who were the two tennis players in the legendary 1973 tennis match? All right, can't wait to see some answers. Dana, yes, I love that. That is probably that was my answer until I actually looked this up to write this trivia question. Billie Jean King and that guy. That guy who, I don't know, we'll see if anybody else answers who that guy was and what the outcome of that match was. But everybody, I think, probably knows the outcome because we remember Billie Jean King and that guy. We'll see if other people have answers, and we'll come back to that one. All right, so after Sandra Day O'Connor in 81, we had astronaut Sally Ride, y'all, in 1983, who became the first American woman in space on board the Space Shuttle Challenger. First American woman in space. The next year, the memory that my husband shared, Geraldine Ferraro, named by Walter Mondale, becomes the first woman vice presidential nominee on a major party ticket. So in 84, it wasn't a glass ceiling that was shattered all the way, but a lot of cracks from Geraldine Ferraro in 84 in executive branch politics. Vicky says Billie Jean wins over Bobby. Yes. Trish says Billie Jean and Bobby Riggs. Trish, you got all the names. Yes. Billie Jean King and Bobby Riggs, Battle of the Sexes tennis match in 1973. And as we all know, Billie Jean wins, and she won in straight sets, you guys. Billie Jean wins in straight sets the Battle of the Sexes in 1973. Let's send up some hearts and raise a glass for Billie Jean and the Battle of the Sexes. And it's so funny, you guys. I read an interview with her that had published, and she was talking about that event and said something to the effect of, she was like scared to death because she's like, if I don't win this, like I'm going to set women back 50 years. She had nothing to worry about. She won. All right, you guys. We're leaving the 80s. We are leaving our Rubik's Cubes and spiral perms behind. And we are going fast forward to 1993. 1993, Janet Reno, appointed by President Bill Clinton, becomes the first female Attorney General of the United States. First female AG of the United States. The very next year, President Clinton signs the Violence Against Women Act. Okay, the Violence Against Women Act was really important legislation in providing funding for programs that help victims of domestic violence, rape, sexual assault, stalking, and other forms of gender violence. That was major legislation that funneled a lot of funding into programs to help women who were survivors of those kinds of gender violence. And our final trivia question of the evening is, who were the two co-sponsors of the Violence Against Women Act? Who were the two co-sponsors of the Violence Against Women Act? And I'll give you guys a hint. It was bipartisan legislation, you guys. This is both sides of the aisle coming together to say this is important legislation and we want to be part of making this the law of the land for the American people and for women in our country. So who are the two co-sponsors of the Violence Against Women Act? I think a lot of us can probably name one of them, but can you name the other one? All right. Take to the comments, you guys. Share your answers, and we're going to get back in our time machine and move forward to Donna's memory. 1997, President Bill Clinton, again, appoints Madeleine Albright to become the first female Secretary of State, you guys. Secretary Albright, 1997, becomes the nation's first female Secretary of State. Yes, Donna says Joe Biden and question mark. It's like Billie Jean King and that guy. Joe Biden and... does anybody know Joe's co-sponsor of the Violence Against Women Act? And as I mentioned, you guys, it's bipartisan. It was bipartisan legislation in the Senate. So who was his co-sponsor? We'll come back to that. All right, so we fast forward 10 years from Secretary Albright. It is now 2007, you guys, 21st century. 21st century, and we are still making firsts, all right? Imagine this, you guys, all right? Back in 1776, Abigail Adams was like, dude, don't forget the ladies. And it is freaking 200 and plus years later, and we are still making these little gains one at a time, you guys. So just remember that hundreds of years of sacrifice and fighting against the status quo to make this progress has gone into this. So imagine what it would just be like to have all of these things be possible for you from day one, but they weren't. Scott says, tough question. He's stumped. Does anybody know who Joe Biden's co-sponsor of the Violence Against Women Act was? All right, meanwhile, it's 2007, you guys. U.S. Representative Nancy Pelosi becomes the first female Speaker of the House of U.S. Representatives. In 2019, she reclaims that title, being the first lawmaker to hold that office 2 times in more than 50 years. All right, 2013, the U.S. military removes a ban against women serving in combat positions. Workplace progress still being made. 2013, you guys, 7 years ago. 7 years ago. All right, 2016, Hillary Clinton becomes the first woman to receive the presidential nomination from a major party. All right, yes. Nobody can figure out who, and you know what? I appreciate y'all that you didn't just go to Google and be like, I'm going to guess this right, because I looked it up. Joe Biden's co-sponsor of the Violence Against Women Act was Senator Orrin Hatch, Republican senator from the state of Utah, you guys. Orrin Hatch, Republican from Utah, was the co-sponsor of the Violence Against Women Act with Joe Biden in 1994. All right, with Hillary becoming the first woman to receive the presidential nomination from a major party in 2016, that concludes our list of 20 milestones for women. And we're going to move into the second half of our show because we just had another, you guys. We just had another major milestone, another glass ceiling shattered to pieces this weekend. This weekend, you guys. And it wasn't just a milestone for women, it was a milestone for women of color. And for those of you who were thinking about this as I was reading this list of milestones and firsts in our country, few of them were women of color. And that makes this one, you guys, all the more meaningful for our sisters of color who have been fighting this fight all these hundreds of years alongside us. This is a major milestone for them. All right, you guys, that also coincides with this week's moment of joy. This week's moment of joy is also the segue to the second, well, it's not really the second half of our show. It's kind of the last quarter of our show. But moment of joy this week is this weekend, you guys, one more major milestone in women's herstory for the United States of America when on Saturday, November 7th, 2020, Kamala Harris became the first woman elected to the executive branch of the United States government. Let's send up some hearts for that, you guys. Raise a glass, take a sip for the first woman elected to the executive branch of the United States government. Good stuff. She is the first woman of color of Jamaican and Indian descent. She is the daughter of immigrants, you guys, the first who will serve as the vice president of the United States. Only took us 200 plus years to get there, right? Don't forget the ladies, John. Don't forget the ladies. All right, but progress. Here we are. Yes. Trish says, ginormous ceiling broken. Ginormous glass ceiling broken. So we are raising a glass to our vice president-elect, to this newest and biggest, like, major milestone. We're getting steps and steps and inches closer, you guys. But it's like I said, 244 years from 1776, when Abigail said, remember the ladies, to scraping and fighting and clawing for rights and progress one by one, little by little. And here we are. And there's still work to do. There's still work to do. So, you know, we know and love Kamala because we've seen her on the national, stage for quite a while. But I want to share 14 facts about Kamala and a few of her favorite things. And some of these you might know, some of these you might not know, but I have found her to be a fascinating woman. Kamala is a California girl, you guys. She is a California girl. Is that a song that you can play on Wednesday, babe? I'm making a spontaneous request in the middle of my show for my husband's show. Can you play California Girls for Kamala on Wednesday? I don't know. I don't think you've ever done Beach Boys, so I don't know if that's going to be possible. But anyway, she's a California girl. She was born in Oakland, California on October 20th, 1964. The eldest of two children, born to Shamila Gopalan, a cancer researcher from India, and Donald Harris, an economist from Jamaica. Her first name, Kamala, means lotus, and is another name for the Hindu goddess Lakshmi and the empowerment of women. How poetic is that, you guys? And for those of you who are familiar with sort of symbolism in Eastern religion and philosophies, the lotus is really revered and symbolic, and it represents these roots in the mud, but the blossoming through the water. And it's a beautiful symbol in Eastern philosophy and Eastern religion. And Kamala means lotus. Dawn says, looking forward to working for Joe and Kamala starting in late January. Yes, Dawn is one of our incredible public servants in government service at the U.S. Commerce Department. I hope it's okay that I said that. But yeah, what an amazing honor, Dawn. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, you guys, Kamala means lotus. In first grade, Kamala was bused to Thousand Oaks Elementary School, which was in its second year of integration. So we may remember that from the debates. She was one of those little girls who benefited from busing when she was a first grader. She moved to Montreal. So her parents divorced when she was a child. She moved to Montreal when her mom changed jobs, so she lived in Canada for a while. When she was 13, you guys, this is one of those fun facts that maybe not everybody knows, or maybe this, did make the rounds in some circles. When she was 13, Kamala and her younger sister Maya led a successful demonstration in front of their apartment building in protest of a policy that banned children from playing on the lawn. When she was 13, y'all, she was already taking up civic action and making progress. She is a graduate of Howard University, just like 30 miles down the road in our nation's capital. Howard is one of the most prestigious historically Black universities in the United States, and she is a graduate. She majored in political science and economics, and she was a member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, which we've heard a lot about lately, and her beautiful sorority sisters have come out in full force to support their girl. All right, in 1990, I was graduating high school. Kamala was passing the bar exam, you guys. She was passing the bar. I was graduating high school. She passed the bar. She joined the Alameda County Prosecutor's Office in Oakland as an assistant DA focusing on sex crimes. But here's the interesting part, you guys. She acknowledged prosecutors have historically had a bad reputation, right? She wanted to change the system, though, from the inside. So she wanted to do good work from the inside in that office. And later on in her career, after being recruited to the San Fran District Attorney's Office by a former colleague in Alameda, Harris helped to reorient law enforcement's approach on teen prostitution, okay, by flipping the viewpoint of it from a crime to the girls as victims of trafficking. So she had an amazing legacy in her role as a DA early on in championing girls and women and changing the way law enforcement viewed them. All right, you guys, in 2003, she ran for district attorney in San Francisco. She was elected in a runoff with 56.5% of the vote. With that victory, Kamala became the first Black woman in California to be elected district attorney. All right, another milestone for women of color in California. In 2010, in her second term as district attorney, Kamala ran for California Attorney General. Now, initially, few thought she was going to win that race. She was a woman of color from liberal San Francisco who opposed the death penalty, and she was running against a guy named Steve Cooley, who was a popular white Republican man who served as LA's district attorney. The race was so tight that on election night, Cooley made a victory speech, and the San Francisco Chronicle declared him the winner on election night. 3 weeks later, though, we all know how things like this can play out. You got to count every vote. Every single vote matters. 3 weeks later, after all the ballots had been counted, Kamala was declared the winner of that election by 0.8 percentage points. Every vote matters. All right. One of her signature accomplishments in that role as Attorney General was creating an organization called Open Justice, an online platform to make criminal justice data available to the public. The database helped improve police accountability. It collected information on deaths and injuries of those in police custody. Now, she also had her critics. Who said she didn't do enough to address police brutality while she was Attorney General, particularly after she had declined to investigate the police shootings of 2 Black men in 2014 and 2015. Now, in 2013, however, Time magazine named her one of the 100 most influential people in the world. In 2013, you guys, as Attorney General of the state of California in the United States, Time magazine named her one of the 100 most influential people in the world. How prescient was that? I bet she's probably a little higher ranking on that list now. So cheers to that, you guys. All right. 2014, Kamala gets married to her hubby, Doug Emhoff, in a small private ceremony that was officiated by her sister. Doug has 2 children from a previous marriage, and they call Kamala, you guys have probably heard this by now, they call her Mamala. How adorable is that, you guys? Her stepkids call her Mamala. Love that. All right, that was in 2014, you guys. 2 years later, Kamala was elected to the United States Senate, where her prosecutorial experience would garner her a reputation as a sharp questioner in committee hearings. She's brutal in questioning in those committee hearings, you guys. I know many of us have seen her on C-SPAN, and she takes no prisoners. It also earned her a spot on Donald Trump's Nasty Women list in 2019 for her questioning of Attorney General William Barr over his handling of the Mueller report in a Senate Judiciary Committee. So she became known as a tough questioner in the U.S. Senate. All right, fast forward, August 11th, 2020, nearly 8 months after ending her own presidential campaign, Kamala accepted Joe Biden's invitation to run as his vice president. She became the first woman of color and only the 3rd woman in HERstory to be the vice presidential nominee for a major party ticket. Now, we already know one of those women. We talked about Geraldine Ferraro was the first earlier. Our last trivia question of the night, you guys, who was the second woman ever to be a vice presidential nominee on a major party ticket? I wonder how many of us remember her name. All right. Take 2. Yes, Trisha says, yeah, Time Magazine. All right. Who was the second woman who made a lot of interesting waves as the vice presidential nominee for a major party ticket? Who was the second woman ever? Our final fun fact about Kamala is this, y'all. On November 7th, after a thorough count of mail-in, early drop-off ballots, and election day results, Kamala Harris became the vice president-elect of the United States of America. And that is the final fun fact that we're going to celebrate tonight. So cheers to that. I also want to share a few of her favorite things because she's really interesting, and sometimes the coolest things are like the little facts about them and how they live their lives and what they do behind the scenes. So I want to share a couple of Kamala's personal faves. All right. Yeah, Christine says Sarah Palin. Does anybody else have a guess? Is it Sarah Palin? Rose says Tina Fey. Good one. Good one. Yes. Trish says yes. Palin. Yes. It was Sarah Palin was the second woman to earn the vice presidential nomination on a major party ticket in the United States. All right, you guys, a few of Kamala's personal faves. She loves to cook. You guys, Mama loves to cook and said she has tried almost all the recipes from Alice Waters, The Art of Simple Food. And Alice Waters is a California chef and major legend in the food world. So her cookbook, The Art of Simple Food, is in my Amazon wish list as of today. Her go-to dinner entree is a simple roast chicken. So she doesn't have to get fancy, y'all. She just loves making some roast chicken. It's probably why her kids love her and call her Mamala. All right. You guys have probably learned this fact from watching her as she's been traveling so much around the country, but she collects Converse, Chuck Taylor sneakers, which are her go-to travel shoes. And some of Kamala's favorite books are Native Son by Richard Wright, The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini, The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan, The Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison, and one of my personal childhood favorites, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. So those are some of the books that Kamala lists as her favorites. All right, you guys, there's 14 facts and some of Kamala's personal faves. That brings us to tonight's charity. And it's a personal one for me, and it's an important one for so many women. So this charity is going to be tied directly to the progress that women have made in the course of United States history. And tonight's charity is Planned Parenthood. You guys, it's Planned Parenthood. And so when we were walking through women's history and we were talking about Margaret Sanger having to close her birth control clinic because it violated those charming Comstock laws, she was not done. She was not done, you guys. After she had to close that clinic, a few years later in 1921, she went on to found the American Birth Control League. And that organization was the precursor to what we know today as Planned Parenthood. And it is an organization that has made such a difference for women's ability to make progress in the workplace, to choose their own destiny in terms of reproductive freedom. And I personally have benefited from Planned Parenthood, you guys. In 2009, when I had lost my health insurance, when the PR firm I was working for closed its doors during the Great Recession, I didn't have health insurance, and my well woman exam was overdue, and Planned Parenthood was there for me, you guys. So I personally have benefited from Planned Parenthood in the form of a well woman's exam. They have been a lifeline for so many other women for years and years and years, and Planned Parenthood is this week's charity. So if you are thinking about making a contribution to support our content and community, 10% of everything this week is going to go to Planned Parenthood. So let's send up some hearts for the amazing health care that Planned Parenthood, for the lifeline that they have been for women for decades and will continue to be. All right, you guys, we are almost at the end of our show. I want to share a couple of fun resources that you guys can, pick up at home to keep this party going for as long as you want. So, I love books, and the first book I want to share is called She Votes. And it was published this year to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. She Votes is how U.S. women won suffrage and what happened next. And it features this incredible art, you guys. It's illustrations by 100 women artists. 100 women artists to celebrate and commemorate 100 years of the women's right to vote. And there is some incredible art in here, you guys, like the stack of books, women who were literally arrested and put in prison for protesting and for trying to win the right to vote. Just a lot of really beautiful art and illustrations about women's suffrage and women's progress in the American story. So, She Votes is one resource I want to share with you guys. The next one is called Bad Girls Throughout History. Bad Girls Throughout History, 100 remarkable women who changed the world. And this is a fascinating connection. And of course, we know they weren't bad girls, but it's kind of tied to a fun little quote that I will share later. And there were a lot of women in here whose stories, frankly, I didn't know very well. There are artists like Mae West, Mata Hari is in here, Madam C.J. Walker, Belva Lockwood. So there are a lot of Jane Austen, okay? There are stories of women that we may know, and there are many, many stories of women whose stories we may not know so well, which brings me to the next resource I want to share with you guys. And that is this great book that also was just published this year called Cassandra Speaks. And Cassandra, the figure from mythology, right, that is, given the gift of, sight and psychic ability, but no one believes her, right? And so this book is, it's nonfiction, and it is When Women Are the Storytellers, the Human Story Changes. And this book is about how women's stories have been told through the lens of men for centuries and centuries and centuries, right? And so I just want to share a little bit from the inside of this book because it's fascinating. What story would Eve have told about picking the apple? Why is Pandora blamed for opening the box? And what about the fate of Cassandra, who was blessed with knowing the future, but cursed so that no one believed her. How familiar does that sound, you guys? Cassandra Speaks, a fascinating book about what happens if women get to tell the stories of our lives. All right. Some books from women's HERstory, and I want to share some resources about the amazing woman that we just talked about in this last part of our show. Kamala's book, The Truths We Hold, really beautiful autobiography, her story, her work, her vision for our country, which is expansive and inclusive, and all of the beautiful, beautiful things that we hope for our country. And there's a lot of great photographs in this book. And my girlfriends were sharing one of them today, which is this great photo of her here when she was a student at Howard University. She's actually out protesting apartheid at Howard University. So a lot of great photos. Kamala's story told in her own words and her vision for the future, you guys. You may also know she's the cover story in this month's Elle magazine. This landed on newsstands on Election Day, and there's a great profile of Kamala in this month's issue of Elle as well. And some fun things. So there's also this super cute Kamala action figure. This company is called Factory. And when we did the episode about RBG, I shared my RBG action figure. And it's the same company has made a Kamala action figure. So y'all with, if you have your own little collectibles at home, or, daughters, nieces, nephews, whoever could benefit from having a Kamala action figure in their lives, they are available. All right. And one more resource I want to share that is super fun and can give you guys hours of fun family time is this 1,000 piece puzzle. Now, my husband and I are puzzle fanatics, you guys, puzzle fanatics. We've been doing puzzles all during the pandemic. My mom loves doing puzzles. And we love doing the big ones, like the 1,000-piece ones that just keep you occupied for a week. And this one, you guys, is from the company called Gallison. And it's Well-Behaved Women Seldom Make History. Well-Behaved Women Seldom Make History. And it's this museum portrait gallery of HERstory history, making women all over the world, right? So you've got Malala here, you've got Jane Austen, Amelia Earhart, Katherine Johnson. There are women here whose stories I also did not know, and it was fascinating. The puzzle also comes with this handy little key and tells you who they all are, so you can go to Google and find out more about them when you get it all put together. And there will be one more resource that I share tomorrow in the show notes, and that is my Girl Power playlist that I put together and lives on Amazon Prime Music. So I will share a link to that in the show notes, which will go live on my website tomorrow by noon, y'all. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for spending this incredible night in celebration of the progress of women, in raising a glass to our Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, and to taking a stroll with me through American HERstory. Trish loves puzzles. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Trish. Thank you, Mama Vicky. Thank you, Georgie. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Donna, Dawn, Rose, George, everyone who came tonight. Thank you so much for being here to celebrate this moment with me. It meant so much to me. I'm so excited to continue this momentum, to continue this enthusiasm, to help build the future bigger, better, stronger for all of us, you guys. We will be here next week, back here to resume our regularly scheduled programming. Our Hygge and Happiness show has been rescheduled for November 23rd, but next week we are going to officially kick off November's theme of Winter is Coming with a conversation about Thanksgiving reimagined, because the world looks a lot different this year than it has in the past, and I imagine our holiday celebrations will as well. And so I want to talk a little bit about Thanksgiving reimagined and what that can look like for the rest of 2020. So thank y'all so much. I love you guys. Thank you for being here with me on Mondays to share these stories and come together in this community. It means the world to me. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. I love you all, and I will see you next week. Have a great night and a great rest of your week. Bye bye.